All right. Well, first of all, welcome everyone to podcast number 3 of the Halcyon Winds Cepheus protocol development. First of all, wow, shit, lost my notes. Oh no. First of all, we're starting with the development roundtable. So today we're with Michael.
So,
Would you like to introduce yourself?
name's Justin. Just call me Michael. Animation lead, and yeah.
Yep. We're also here with Robert, also known as Dark.
Hello, I'm the project director.
And Ashley, if you'd like to say anything.
Oh, I'm just here listening, but I'm the art director, Halcyon Winds.
We also have another one down there, Efren, but he seems to be having a bit of a meltdown.
He's a level designer. When he gets back, so level design questions will be pointed towards him. If he's still having technical issues, then I'll answer them the best I can.
Yep. All right, let's get the dev roundtable started. So let's first start off with the current update. What's your guys' thoughts on the current update and where it currently sits?
Okay, well, I guess I'll go first. The current update was oriented towards basically transitioning over systems to the crowd following manager and other systems that basically are more preferred in Epic's eyes to be able to simulate crowds and groups of people up to the thousands, similar to the Matrix demo they did previously. So we've been basically trying to convert some of our underlying systems over, so when they make that transition of releasing Unreal Engine 5, foreseeably in the future of the next month or two, since they just went to preview yesterday, we can make that switch, and then we can use it for civilian simulation and for the faction simulation, so we can actually properly populate the worlds and not have them, well, dead, like it is right now at times, where basically, you hit a patch of area and there's no one there. And then obviously the other thing we're looking at is that basically to simulate and fake some of the stuff that's going on outside of your realm of influence, to basically be able to focus more resources on what's actually going on in your sphere of the world. That's my run at it. What about you, Michael? What's your takeaways and what you added to the patch this week?
I'd say the biggest thing is kind of cleaning up the blueprint side of things, fixing the alert states to kind of get rid of that flicker when they would start shooting and moving. They would do like kind of like a disco dance. They'd kind of put their guns down and back up over and over again. So kind of polishing that side of things. I didn't get to really implement a lot of new features or weapons. Originally I was going to, but it seemed rebalancing the unit's health was also another thing that we're going to kind of rehash and kind of change the difficulty of the game a little bit to make the infected feel a little bit stronger, I would say, to kind of balance out the gunplay just overall. Besides that, I mean, that was really my major push for this update, was kind of more of a polish on the areas that I'm in charge in.
Since Efren's not here, I'll talk on his behalf. He's having technical issues. It is essentially, from a level designer standpoint, it's been about getting the levels optimized and getting them refined in terms of like, okay, we're done with Treasure Island. Now we can go officially move on to San Francisco North and add that area of the world to the map. So it's about basically remodeling some of the vehicles, simplifying the setups, doing materials and texture cleanup, and trying to reduce draw calls and material IDs, which is basically in some cases very similar, where we could. And then obviously, not obviously, but Efren's been working on the interiors. We're adding about 8 or so interiors to the game that Natalie and some of the civilian groups will operate out of. That you'll be able to go inside, and they can walk in and out interchangeably. It's just like it's like a full-on interior, where it's like just some of the buildings have been hollowed out essentially, and the idea is that it's mostly for Natalie's group to operate out of, but sometimes the civilians will also live there as well, and that's something Efren's working on. So you'll probably notice that here and there. You'll be able to look through the windows and see some of the buildings actually are starting to have interiors to a certain degree. Again, there's only 8 in the entirety of both islands, just for optimization's sake of trying to populate and have that many going on in all the levels. But yeah, that's just kind of updating for Efren there. And then the other thing I missed earlier is we've also been updating the we converted the seeing and hearing system from the older system of pawn sensor to a peripheral component, which is the more updated, more refined version of basically hearing and seeing. And we've basically been implementing that and updating it so that it works with our pawns and just doing that switch amongst the dozens, if not hundreds, of bug fixes and changes we've had to do to try and streamline the game. Because obviously the entire time we're working on this, we're always going backwards and changing and cleaning up things to get it as refined as possible for adding new content, but also getting to the point of co-op, getting to the point of modding, where these systems make, like if you're someone looking from the outside in, it's very straightforward to do something. So that's why, like, sometimes you'll see in the patch notes of like, oh, we redid this, we changed that, because maybe we looked at another modding tool, or we looked at this, or we basically were doing some research, and we were like, okay, we need to make these systems more efficient, not only for the performance sake of people what they're playing, but also for when we get to co-op and actually doing replication, it'll be easier to maintain and keep inventory of these items. Anyhow, back to you, Derivar. That's everything I got.
So another thing concerning the current build of the game is what is your guys' opinion on the current bug reports that have been going on? Because I've seen quite a few. So what's your stance on that?
Michael, you want to take this one?
Run that by one more time. I can't hear you.
That's right. Just the current bug reports that have been going on with the current build. What are your stances and what are your opinions on some of the things that make it around to being helped and being looked after? Oh, hey, Efren.
I'd say probably the biggest thing is being able to have that direct communication and kind of figure out what exactly is just making the game unplayable for people and kind of going through that. And we're actually still kind of revamping the QA side of things, changing how we're going to start doing that process a little bit, and then also increasing the amount of people we have in the QA team to kind of prevent things that happen like this morning where just a lot of things slip through the cracks, honestly.
Yeah, and I agree with Michael. Is that you figure we need to basically, we're going to be doubling down on getting QA, getting about 20 people that can basically just kind of help us volunteer basis and just kind of help find bugs. Because generally I can't find, I miss some, obviously, because I'm the one that probably play test the game the most. And it comes down to basically just kind of having a little bit more to just kind of fill in there. And then obviously just, again, like what Michael said, that transparency, that honesty of like, oh, we missed that, we're going to fix it, thanks for letting us know, and that's what we'll be doing. Half of the podcast is pretty much just having a meeting. And basically like, okay, you guys go off and fix this, you guys go fix that, and then if we can't have a fix out tonight, we'd have it on Monday. In terms of basically just kind of like, okay, they let us know, now we got to go fix stuff.
Yeah. Oh, my brain's just completely shut down. I'm sorry. So, for the past build, how would you rate the current build to the previous one?
That's hard to see at this point, because you figure we still haven't, the Horde, we had an issue with the previous Horde thing where it wasn't starting and initializing correctly, so we think we fixed that confidently. And now it's just a matter of basically just seeing where everything kind of falls and then just fixing it where needed. I mean, I personally think that we're in a better state than we were previously. It comes down to like the infrastructure of the game on the back end, and then it's just a matter of a couple of days of just rearranging and cleaning up some things, some bugs that got through the nets of just, and then from there it just at that point, back on civilian management and back on factions.
So faction.
Did you die?
my brain is not having a good time this morning.
Oh, you're fine.
I do apologize about that. So in terms of factions, with the factions currently in the game, what will eventually change?
When it comes down to the factions, we're going to be basically, I mean, for those who haven't read Letter to the Producer, the drive-by is that basically Natalie is going to be a group that basically hides and is more disguised in the map. They're not apparent. That is Natalie's group. That is Natalie. The idea is that they're just dressed as normal civilians, and that they operate out of the buildings that we're hollowing out across the map to basically act as their chop shops and their HQs, where they basically recruit and run operations. They're gonna have one of the lowest population counts, but they're gonna be like the GLA, where they just kind of pop up, attack, and then disappear, hit and run attacks. Then Pierce is gonna be more like the company heroes British, where he's gonna have a lot of vehicles that were basically very mobile, being able to get around the map and basically just hunker down in a location with his key structures, and then vassalize and work with other civilian groups to exert power in a region or zone. And again, he'll have a moderate population, and he'll be able to take it to Cirque at times. But you figure like he'll have to rely on the civilians as well to kind of keep you at I guess you could say like to where you don't go and start doing killing everyone, because the idea is that we're trying to basically add it to where there are consequences to killing the civilians, to killing Pierce, because generally if you kill Pierce, the civilians will hate you for quite a while because he's their protector, and if you're killing civilians, then Pierce will turn against you in terms of basically openly wanting to attack you, and then the civilians will attack your bases as well. And Natalie, the reason why we hit her was because she doesn't really have any allies, so she's just kind of like this third wheel of just kind of she's working in the background. You can ally with her, or you can fight against her, and it's generally just that's the direction we're going in for factions. And then beyond that, we're gonna have sub factions, which are basically there's gonna be cannibals, there's gonna be peaceful we'll call them peaceful people right now, and there's going to be militants. And the idea is that those three groups will, when you start a game from now on, those three groups are going to basically be randomly rolled to basically grow and take over each zone on the map. And sometimes they'll expand to other zones. Sometimes they'll get killed by Chelsea before you show up, and it'll just be a bunch of dead people everywhere. And sometimes Pierce will kill them if they're more of the eviler groups of people, like the raider kind of people, because they can still be good or bad based off of like how they fight Pierce, or they fight Natalie, or they fight you. Because I mean, you figure there's a chance they can roll as a cannibal, which is the lowest chance, and that they're kind of like a pseudo Chelsea, where they'll hide their motivations and they won't just attack you outright, but they'll wait till you're in smaller groups and then try and shiv you, eat you, blah blah blah. So that's kind of the direction we're going into for the city simulation of like you have like the people and how they're going to devolve and the different branches they're going to go into, but then you also have like the bigger factions and like Natalie and like Pierce's faction, where they're a little more like organized, and they have more tools available to them. They're more of a threat, but the civilians can be a threat based off of their numbers anyway in some cases. If you're just constantly killing them throughout the game, eventually that will come back to bite you in the ass, because no one's going to want to work with you, and every time you go through their territory, they're going to shoot at you. So that's the spiel right now in terms of the direction we're going in. But right now, the goal is getting civilian management and getting over these hurdles we are right now about fixing up the bugs that were encountered last night and this morning, and then from there continuing civilian management. Because this morning we were working on civilian management, and we were working on the the cannibal groups and just the rolling of civilian stuff, and we'll put that off for a couple of for today and Monday to basically fix the bugs, and then go back to that either Monday night or Tuesday, because the goal would be is once we get this current build solidified, once everyone's happy, once the game is playable, then we're going to immediately jump over. Shh, donkey. We're gonna immediately jump over to back to civilian management and knock out the randomly rolling groups, and then add the automation to the civilian hold and all that stuff, so that you don't have to babysit them. And then from there, go into Pierce, and then go into Natalie in that order. Yeah, so there you go, there, Mark.
Fair enough. Anything you'd like to add, Michael or Afrin?
You're just talking about like for future update or like in general?
Just for factions.
In general, just factions and anything that is currently or
Just for faction,
right
just more abilities. That's really it for me when it comes to the faction side of things. Just more uniqueness with units to separate everything.
And the big thing Michael's been pushing is about basically making sure that the factions have unique weapons, and they play certain ways, they have different abilities. There's a uniqueness to them, like what he was saying, where like basically he's giving them like completely different weapons than what Cirque uses. You know, so Natalie's going to have her own assortment of weapons, Pierce is going to have his own assortment of weapons, the lieutenants, or the leaders for each group will have their own unique weapon. Winters is getting her own unique weapon. And he's basically just kind of going about like, okay, like how do we make these characters like unique and play on their own? And then on top of that, how do we buff Winter so she's a better leader in terms of basically not just the internal joke of she's just an upgraded assault, is by giving her some passive boost in the future to boost XP gains possibly when she's around people, and other things that we're looking at long term to make Winter stand out more as a commander. And the same thing for Pierce, same thing for Natalie, same thing for Chelsea, same thing for her lieutenants. It's just little things that we can do to basically just flesh them out more. But yeah.
Here's something I'd like to hear from Michael about is weapons. Where do you currently stand, and where are you happy with how the weapons are and the way they look and the way they function?
I mean, as they stand, I mean, yes, I'm happy with them. I mean, ultimately, I'm a gun horse, so I'd like to add more. There's always
good.
There's always more time. There's always more room for guns.
Always more room for more guns. So moving on to the questions posted in the podcast questions channel. I thank everyone for putting their questions in there. So the first question that we're going to cover is from Misrael. And the question is, seen a few people talking about the tutorial. It's a bit dated and lacking. Any plans to revamp that soon?
When it comes to the tutorial, our plan is to revamp it. We're going to get rid of the little tutorial girl. We're going to replace her with an actual tutorial. We're kind of looking at how Arma does their tutorial, where they break up into modules. Basically, like they cover different aspects of gameplay. We think that the best time to do that would be after we finish the civilian management and factions. Is to basically, I'm going to go off and just delegate some resources to just make a Alcatraz island. That's a training island, and it'll basically just teach the player how to play an operator, how to play the RTS aspects of the game, how to control vehicles, and just give you tiny little scenarios. We're also playing around with the idea of just basically having like little one-off missions that also play on Treasure Island itself, that are just like little cut-ups to kind of give us some, to force us to basically improve our mission scripting system for the campaign. I'm going to get to that point of development. But yeah, we do know the tutorials frankly suck, and that we need to redo them completely. Because I don't think there's a single person on the team that's happy with the way the tutorials are. But when we have limited resources and we have to basically do new features and new mechanics or tutorials, it's kind of, and then we're constantly changing the game. We believe the best step forward would be to finalize the core, the framework, like we're doing now, and then move towards that, and then when we add new minor systems like the bounty changes, and all that, we'll add a new tutorial to teach how bounties work. Then it's just a standalone mission that teaches that one thing, and then you can back out to the main menu, and then maybe go and play the game now, or you can just try out the bounties live because the bounty system won't be that complicated. Um, because when we pull a reference from Red Dead, we want to basically make it to where like each bounty is like a little bit randomly generated, and there's a backstory behind them, and it's not just go kill random blow up guy in Square X. So the idea is that's what we're going towards. Yeah. So back to you, Dermar. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. A question from Delta20 is, what's the current stage of development?
That's a broad question.
That's a very broad question. That's why I picked it. I went, ooh, here we go.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. How do I word that? I mean, you figure. We're just developing it still. I mean, you figure when it comes down to it, we expect to be in early access for foreseeably as long as Squad was, at least 4 to 5 years. We aren't happy until the game is a little more solidified, the jank is removed, the optimization issues are resolved. We're really giddy to get to the point of being able to introduce another faction in the future. We still have to make Chelsea's faction playable, and you figure write the AI so people can play as infected versus Cirque. So I mean, there's a lot still on the table, and there's a lot the game still needs to evolve because I see personally the game kind of like Stellaris, where it's just kind of constantly changing, evolving, and just kind of taking on life of its own, based off of just what the game actually needs to just properly be able to simulate the how things would fall apart and like if a zombie virus actually existed and how you'd be able to the systems that we can put in to kind of help you like push it in different directions towards destruction or towards salvation or maybe somewhere in the middle in terms of basically like how you're going to choose who lives and who dies. And there's a lot there I feel still needs to be done to properly simulate that. um, Hopefully I answered your question, because that's a very broad question, and I have a lot of things that I feel still needs to be done. The team still has a lot of things they feel needs to be done. A lot more zones need to be added to the game. So like that's a very long list for me.
Very, very long list indeed. Someone from the Twitch Disco Jedi asks, would you rebalance fuel economy for vehicles? They run out very fast.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard on and off occasionally, and I'm waiting to do that until we get to the point where we can add the change to where vehicles are vulnerable to melee damage, and they only take damage from some calibers of weapons in certain areas of their body, because I want to see how all that plays out before I, nerf increase their gas, because right now they're lumbering tanks. Like if you could get a good rapid movement going supported by atlases, you could face roll a good majority of the maps with the strikers, especially if you have Atlas support and the repair vehicles and support teams. So I'm not sure about that just yet, because once we add it to where they're invulnerable to standard infected, that's another. That's just they're going to be even more godly. So it's going to come down to limiting them via their gas and the logistical chain of their bullets and their ammo. Sorry, their gas and their ammo to basically balance them to a certain degree. And then also making sure that Chelsea can adapt, because we need to improve Chelsea's AI in the future, so she's more reactive in terms of what you're doing. So if she sees that you're just destroying them with like heavily armored vehicles, she'll make the tangible decision, the logical decision, to spawn juggernauts, to spawn blow up guys, to spawn spitters, and attack and send them in waves to basically try and get you to back off or to just kill you outright. Um, but yeah, I mean, you figure where we are. I am thinking about that. It's just I don't want to change that just yet. I'm thinking it's on my radar.
Question from King Size: what will the expansion of the map and adding in parts of San Francisco look like?
So as it stands right now, we are waiting for Unreal Engine 5 to release because it adds double float precision for mouse clicks. we had an issue where once we went a certain distance away from 000, it would basically cause inaccuracy on mouse clicks, and we basically had to stop expanding in different directions. And then basically the whole push of Unreal Engine 5 is open worlds, larger worlds, kind of like the Matrix demo. So our hope is that if it supports and the tech aligns, we don't have to cut up the islands and make them into like San Francisco and then Treasure Island. In our ideal world, we can keep one consistent large map and just keep adding to it for San Francisco North and South and potentially other surrounding zones if there's a demand for it. But again, that comes down to computer tech at the time when it will support. Because I mean, you figure you got to also think about this, and I was talking to Derival about this the other day, is that when we get to doing like co-op, if players get too far away, it can become a strain on the CPU to where basically you have to do what Unchained Cohead does, where basically you have to add a tether if they're on a listen server, and then if they're on a dedicated server, you just remove that tether. So you figure because then you have a dedicated processor, RAM, hardware processing the entire world. But that's something we're always thinking about in the back of our mind in terms of basically like what is going to be the transition to co-op and how are we going to when we design these systems, making sure that we're thinking about like the future so we don't have to go back. Um, so you figure that would be the ideal route. That's what I want to do, but it'll come down to Unreal Engine 5, and it'll come down to just technology at the time to basically be able to, it's like, can a computer actually fully simulate these chunks to the level we want? And one thing we are looking at is we're looking at Red Dead, we're looking at Grand Theft Auto, how they fake their world, and how they have systems that simulate, like in Civilization as well, where they'll turn off aspects of gameplay and basically just have things simulate the things that are going on in these areas, and then focus more on the areas of influence the player actually can see and are in. That's something we're also looking into. So I mean, yeah, I mean, in our ideal world, we're gonna expand it to just have it to where you can load up helicopters and drive from Treasure Island straight to San Francisco, and then you would actually have the factions operating in that entire area, and expand Natalie and Pierce so they have main bases on the mainland of San Francisco, and they have minor bases on Treasure Island. So we'll see how that goes based off of just well, the performance and how well the engine can handle it. Um, Otherwise, we'll fall back on chunking it up and having Treasure Island as its own map, and then having San Francisco North and South as their own map. That's the worst case scenario. Back to you, Durvar, for that one.
King Size asks, any insight on how stealth mechanics will work in the future? Benefits of staying silent, new abilities for units, stuff like that.
When it comes to stealth, I mean, I'm pretty keen on that because I personally love stealth action games. So when it comes, like, we have it. That's the reason why we did the peripheral vision component the way we did it, where it wasn't an absolute like in Company Heroes. You actually have some ability to sneak and use people's perceptions against them. Um, I would want to see that improved more so towards the spec ops that they released because they're supposed to be your hit and run, like your assassination squad. If you're trying to go in and basically do attacks on it, whether it be Pierce, Natalie, civilians, Chelsea, um, and we do. I mean, I would argue that we do have quite a bit there in the vein of like the way they hear because when you shoot your gun, they don't exactly know where you are. They put up like we have a Far Cry type system where basically it keep every time you shoot your gun, they guess where it came from, and then they basically start doing a triangle where they zone in after every shot where it could possibly be. Silence weapons are a little bit broken right now because they kind of confuse the fuck out of them, and it takes them a lot longer to figure it out. Um, but you figure like if you're going silenced and you have guns and you're not continually running from engagement to engagement, you can bait the AI as it stands right now. And you can like for instance like shoot a bunch of people or like use the fire and air ability and then just run away and you could lure infected to like civilian camps or whatever. So I mean you figure um, it's there. It just probably just needs a little more finessing here and there as we just kind of bring in the other classes, and the more militant armed groups of like the Pierce and Natalie, and actually like see how the gunplay works out, and maybe see if we need to tweak things here and there to make sure that they're performing where they need to perform. That's everything I got there, Mar.
Michael, do you want to add anything more on the new abilities for units side of that question? Since you're...
There's a lot of plans, I would say, for especially once we introduce a few of the factions on how stealth's going to play out and how weapons are going to have certain augments that kind of change how the class plays additional. A lot of stealth changes are coming, though.
Average asks, any news on the fan art showcase?
I mean, I know Total War does one, so I don't have a problem with it. Ashley, what do you think?
I think that'd be really neat to see all the fan art, like showcase it.
Huzzah! So I mean, I guess we could.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about making a Discord channel for it. We just got a little bit stuck in the weeds with this week's patch, so we have to put some more icons on the Discord and just do a little more branding here and there. And when we do that, I'll see about making like a fan art channel, and then the moderators will just have to watch that like an eagle to make sure no one posts anything awkward.
Yeah, it'll be a bit funny seeing some weird shit in the some weird stuff in the fan art that
Yeah.
that would be. I think I'd need to singe my eyebrows a few times.
Oh no.
Anyway, Pop asks when will we have the campaign and story for the game?
Campaign at this point is going to be an immediate goal after we wrap up the co-op and basically getting the modding in. Our plan is to basically we already expect to bleed over from the year 2 roadmap into the year 3 roadmap. Our goal is to basically get through it as quickly as possible, going into what's the official date that we're supposed to announce the year 3 roadmap? May. Is that you figure we expect fully to bleed over May for a year 2 roadmap. Going ahead, we're gonna probably put a little bit less on the roadmaps because we generally get a lot of feedback of like really good ideas that end up basically getting like stuck in there, and then it pushes those deadlines further and further away. Because generally, like there's a lot of ideas that we've gotten from civilian management and other systems that were totally needed, but they weren't planned initially. So it's one of those things where we feel like we're going to have to restrict how many items are in the actual roadmap, so it allocates us more time and take more user feedback, so we can add maybe structures or other things people give us suggestions that are really good ideas. Like we still have to sneak in guard towers, and those are going to be coming in on like the base building part of year two's roadmap. Which is a big thing. I know people are fucking adamant about guard towers and like the micro of the minesweeper stuff and all the other stuff, getting rid of a lot of the over the done micro babysitting. Um, so yeah, I mean, you figure we need to get that situated. We need to get the core in a place where you guys can confidently sit down and have 6 to 8 hour long sessions, and then at that point, add the co-op, get the co-op fleshed out, playable, it's polished, there's no issues. And then from there, our plan is to take about probably 3 to 6 months of quiet time, just doing minor bug fixes here and there, and focus on that time to get the campaign out and done right. So at this point, the campaign will definitely be like something that's like a 2023 endeavor in terms of basically like so that way, because we don't want to rush it. And you figure we want to build Alcatraz because we're going to be using provinces that we've already built for San Francisco North and South. We're going to be using provinces that we built for Treasure Island, but there's going to be entirely new zones. There's going to be entirely new cutscenes. And then we have to invest in the mocap technology, which we're doing now with the gameplay. Me and Michael's coming down in 2 weeks, and we're going to be basically redoing all the game animations from the ground up via a professional mocap suit. We'll be learning that tech, and then we'll be slowly but surely scaling up over the next couple of months to a year up to basically invest in a couple more suits, invest in actors to do the parts, and then basically from there just light show, camera action, whatever, and basically just okay, let's do the cutscenes and let's do the campaign. And the way that the roadmap is designed is that basically like the bounties and other systems are alliterative in terms of basically like they build on getting us to that point because they force us to improve underlying systems like the mission system and other systems that basically will make the campaign scripting efficient and very easy to do. Um, I don't know if anyone's been following us since DreamHack, but like you figure like we did some mission scripting back in the day. We did have some like if you QA'd the game back in the day, and it was one of those things where like you figure we wanted to make sure that it played right, it was fun. I mean, you could probably find videos of it on YouTube somewhere actually. But it's just one of those things where we want to make sure it spends enough time in the oven. Um, but yeah, so it's gonna be definitely like a 2023 type of thing. So we can just make sure co-op gets the attention it needs, and then modding gets the attention it needs. Back to you, Dermar.
A bit of a question from me to Michael. What is it like to animate some of these things, especially with mocap technology being? Some of the things I've seen is pretty funny to work with. What's it actually like to work with animations like that?
Interesting for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of different quirks. I mean, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's annoying. It honestly just kind of fluctuates based off the complexity of the animation or what exactly you're trying to accomplish with set animation. And especially getting it in the engine to play nicely, which is a whole nother thing on its own. So, I mean, it fluctuates, but I'd have to say you learn something new every day, I would say.
It's good to learn something new every day.
And the biggest thing was that you figure, we had to do things wrong a lot of times before we got it right. In terms of basically like you figure, as an indie studio trying to do something that's not the norm in terms of basically investing in mocap, and trying to get the space so we can actually do these things ourselves, and we bought the suit ourselves. We have a space for it ourselves, so that way we can basically learn it at our own pace and be able to sometimes we basically playing around with older suits that were a little bit cheaper. They didn't work out as well as we thought they were going to work out. So, and then basically having to that's what Michael's kind of hinting towards in terms of like the frustration aspect of it, and it was about basically doing the research as well as actually just doing it ourselves of like, okay, what suit is going to be the suit that we need that's going to give us the least amount of issues, and we settled on the XN suit, the one that Valve uses and EA uses for some of their cutscene stuff in Battlefield and Call of Duty as well. Everyone generally uses this suit, and we settled on that suit. So it was about making that investment. It was about basically, learning the technology, doing it on webcam of just doing the early previs stuff of just kind of like, okay, is this going to work? Are we going to run into any issues when he comes down here in 2 weeks? And then making it to where it's as streamlined as possible, so we do get to the point of he's here in like 2 weeks, and we're cracking at it in terms of a day for each class. We're throwing the weapons around. We're probably pissing off my neighbors, which is great. You figure we're going through the whole 9 yards and making sure that we get his passion for weapons, and into the game in terms of the animations, and and making sure they're fleshed out and they're lively, and that there's a lot going on. Because that's a big thing for me as well is that you figure I hate the uncanny valley, and when you're playing the game and you look at people and they're all playing the exact same animation at the exact same second, and it's just odd. So that's like a big thing that we're going to be pushing when he comes down. Is like we're going to be going in and we're going to be making a crap ton of idols. We're going to be making a crap ton of fires, a crap ton of reloads. So then that way, when you're looking at it, it's like Total War. You can kind of look at it and you can actually like get lost in it. Like personally, there are times where I like sitting there and watching them fight. Sometimes I don't zoom all the way out because I want to get to the point as well where there's enough attention to detail to the characters where you can sit there and look at them and stare at them and appreciate how they move and how they're fighting the infected. That's another reason why we want to push melee and we want to push riot shields, because then that way we can basically have it where you could like in Dawn of War, you can toggle between the melee modes. They'll automatically melee if they're left in that mode to protect themselves. So we're adding everyone to have a Kabar knife. We bought a plastic Kabar knife That's basically like, and then I'll be the test dummy, and then Michael will be stabbing me. We bought a test machete. So the same thing. There's that you figure Michael will be in the mocap suit, and then we'll be doing civilian animations with the machetes and throwing them, and doing like Molotov cocktail throws. So generally, all the animations that you're going to be seeing going in towards Q1 to Q2 of this year, the new ones, are going to be just me and Michael just in a room, just beating our craft for hours and hours and hours to basically make sure that our love for the game comes through in terms of its animation. Back to you, Derivar.
I guess Michael's kind of living out his wildest dreams right there by stabbing you with fake knives and whatnot.
Yeah, he gets to stab me randomly whenever the fuck he wants and throw shit at me. I think it's. I'm sure he can't wait for that one. Anyway.
Get a foam brick or something and throw it at you.
Thank you for that.
So Commander Vex actually has a pretty good one here. Will we be getting different tiers of tech? Like starting off, you get the vehicles that you see on the map that the National Guard uses, and you get the National Guard units. But you can choose to escalate the support you get. You can choose to escalate the support you will get will be greater, allowing you to get more advanced units, specifically specialty circ units.
Okay, so when it comes to specialty units, the most we're planning right now is we're trying to keep the National Guard and all other groups separate, because if we end up putting them in as factions or simulating them, we want them to either, like in some cases, work with you, work against you based off of the situation deteriorating, and you fucking them over in some cases. So when it comes down to it for like super weapons, we're going to plan on adding an air control tower where you can take control of one of the two airfields in either Treasure Island South or Angel Island North. And the idea is that you can build that, and then a C5, I think it's a C5 Galaxy will come in, and you can order the Abrams. You can order like higher tier vehicles that will basically come in, and they'll be super weapons. Um, maybe the Bradley. We're still debating on that one. We know we want to add an LTV, but that might be added to the motor pool because eventually we do want to play around with aquatic combat, but we're not sure where we're gonna open that can of worms. Um, but definitely we're settling on the Abrams, and then the added thing for that is you'll be able to use that airfield to evacuate civilians based off of the ROE you'll set up. That we'll be pushing is that you'll set like, okay, if they're clean and they've been into my camps for X long, automatically deposit them and send them to an airfield, the closest airfield. And then from there, you could have patrol routes and other things set up to guard them along these canals or wherever you're going to move them from your camps to the airfield, to the plane, and then off to a ship off the coast. And that's generally the idea that we're going for like, that aircraft control tower. And again, like the only super weapon we're thinking about right now is the Abrams, but there could be more based off of just, you know, as we go. Because we want to also add more infected types to the infected, and we want to improve their AI, and basically once we're done with that and we do the Abrams, then we'll be like, okay, what else is needed? What do we feel? What could we add in the doctrine tree towards each play style that would really kind of make people happy in terms of the airborne? People like to land in airborne units like in the original company heroes. People that like to play airborne, and people like to play armored core. Like that way we can kind of build towards those three disciplines, and maybe in some cases have some experimental weapons where they can maybe like, I know there have been some talk about weaponizing the Pangu virus in some capacities, and we're not sure about that just yet, but it's something we're still talking about internally in terms of like maybe we could have a doctrine tree section that does that, but we're not completely 100% because pandemic mode isn't canon, so it's your story. It's how you are Cirque. How would you solve this problem? So we might break canon and allow people to do shit with the Pangu virus to weaponize it, and we're still debating it. And it's about seeing if we can fit it in, when we can fit that into the development schedule. Anyway, back to you, Durbar. And keep in mind we have 6 minutes, so we need to wrap it up soon.
Yep. So let's move on to the final section, which is just the closing discussions and So anything you guys would like to basically discuss with each other or discuss with the community about the upcoming content for Cepheus Protocol, or anything that is on the way.
Efren, you should talk. You haven't talked at all. You have the floor.
Yeah.
I'm
You have the floor, Efren.
Tell us about what's coming up. What do you want to tell the people?
Well, I mean, as far as what I've been working on is the exterior addition. I mean, not the exterior, sorry, interior additions to some of the buildings on the map. We've been playing around with what we can get away with as far as play space inside these buildings, and keeping it at a somewhat realistic scale, because there have been some issues with keeping, like regular sized doors traversable. Sometimes the nav acts in ways that it shouldn't, and we've been playing with nav radius and trying to get these small doors to work. We have been talking also about maybe considering, you know, widening them. I know it'll make them look a bit goofy, but if it helps gameplay, it's a direction we might have to go. A lot of this is also going to be transitioning when we start working on the campaign for San Francisco, because we want to incorporate a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know if I can even say this.
Yeah, you can say it.
Robert brought up the other night having a train system or a metro system on the map, so that players can transport between areas on the metro system, which I thought was a really cool idea. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's a very cool idea. A lot of the work I do here, it's really just kind of researching what we can do and building the stuff, and you know see what we can do with the tech that we have, and Unreal Engine's capabilities. So a lot of what we're doing now is going to be incorporated into the San Francisco map, and we're hoping that when we get to that, it's going to be a lot more polished. It's going to work the way it should, and a lot smoother. And it's just going to make gameplay a lot more interesting. And I'm really excited about it, mainly because of the incorporation of first person. Now we're building interiors, and I imagine myself like in a situation in this house or in this building. Where would I build defenses, and where would I take out infected from? Having second floors. I mean, I might have gone a little overboard with the interiors, but at the moment they're just blockouts. We're gonna see what we can do with them, and I'm really excited as to how players are gonna react to the new depth and play gameplay.
And just to add on to that, basically we have powwows, or every couple of weeks, every couple of days, we'll sit in the room. We just kind of brainstorm what could the game need in the future. And one thing that just kind of came up is I thought it'd be interesting, again, like what Efren was saying, is like having like train tunnels, or like those subways you can go down, and they're an actual level. You can like run from one train station to another, and you can use vehicles in the ones where they have those little half dome entrances. You could drive them in and drive convoys from one part of San Francisco to Treasure Island or to another one, and then Chelsea could be in the underground tunnels, infesting them, or civilians could be. And that's something that we're going to try and experiment with when we go to San Francisco North, is that if we have our way, connect the islands not just through air travel, and if we get to the point of naval travel, but also try and have like an underground network of a tunnel, a modular set basically we build that would essentially just connect certain districts of, like, you might see us, if it works and it's feasible and we're able, the stars align, go along the route of, like, you might see some random train stations just randomly appear in certain grids of Treasure Island, or the message might change and they might be enterable at one time or another. And the idea is that's us pushing that angle, because like this patch, if you look very closely, some of the buildings are hollowed out in some key areas of all of the map. And those are where Natalie and the civilians are going to take refuge. You probably can't go into them completely just yet because the closed and blocked off some of them. But you could theoretically, if you really wanted to get in there, you could probably find a way of bugging yourself in there. But you figure that's generally something that I think I'm really excited for as well, because I love the idea of like that horror cramp of like leading your guys down there in the underground sewers, and like you using it to kind of bypass an area that you cannot traverse normally above ground, or you just don't want to deal with them knowing you're coming via the helicopters. So that's something I'm very excited for, to experiment and prototype. So that'll be fun. We have 1 minute, so Durvar, you want to wrap it up? Maybe one quick question, and then we'll adjourn. Cause we gotta get back to bug fixing, like ASAP.
I'm trying to find a quick question for you. I don't have one myself, to be honest. I've run a blank.
Would anyone have anything? I don't know, Michael, Ashley, you have any questions you guys want to answer? You guys saw really quickly. Efren?
Sadie.
Okay.
Really, it's just honestly, I just thought this one with the metro system. It's more of just the lines of like setting up machine guns and everything, just in case Chelsea decides to want to take you out from behind. Really, via the
Absolutely.
metro system herself. It's like would machine guns be a feasible thing, kind of like Metro Exodus or the Metro series themselves?
I mean, I would say so, but it comes down to how will we settle on the level design. Because if we make it like a sprawling labyrinth where basically there are maintenance tunnels and other areas that you have to lock down, it could. Because the biggest thing is that the infected are very easy to contain when they're let me rephrase this. So when it's wide and open, you could do a lot of damage with the AOE. But when it's very cramped and you don't have that much time to react, and your units have to worry about reloading and a bunch of other stuff, theoretically things could go wrong very quickly. So like you figure, I don't know, it's one of those things where we're gonna have to experiment. It's more of a prototype idea, something we want to try, and it comes down to basically just kind of like again, it comes down to level design in terms of basically are there flanking paths to here? Do you have to barricade these entrances, or and how would we do it? Can you blow up these areas to close off the door entrance? I don't know, but it's like those are all things that we basically pass through QA, if and when we can get it working, and then you guys would ultimately give your feedback, and then from there we'd address accordingly. But I think it's something that's very exciting to at least try or look into in the future when time will allot when we're building San Francisco Northlex. Okay, we
Okay.
are out of time though.
Yep.
Thank you guys for coming. You guys were great. We'll be doing this again in the podcast channel, so you can pretty much just see where the next time we'll have it. Sorry, in the events channel. I gotta really quickly run because I have to do a meeting exactly at 1 and I'm 2 minutes late now.
Yep. I also wish to extend this is this to anyone who didn't get their questions answered. We will be able to. We will come around to answering them later in the next podcast. So your questions will be archived. I will write them down and make sure who wrote them. And thank you everyone, and thank you very much for coming along. And thank you to Efren, Ashley, Michael, and Dark.
Thank you guys.
Not a problem.
Alrighty.